All right, so here we are. We're on 25th of March, 2022, and we're talking about the progress or lack of progress that Russia's making in Ukraine right now in their invasion. And in all actuality, Russia in their offensive has slowed down to more of a mudslide than an attack. They have slowly gained some territories, but they have given up an awful lot of ground and things that they have previously said that they fully controlled. So we're going to go through the map here and talk about a few different things, and we'll be back in just a minute to finish off what we're going to talk about this week. All right, so here we are, March 25th. Update for Ukraine. Last week I said Odessa was going to fall, and I was wrong about that. There was an amphibious block of ships that left out of Crimea, and I really thought Odessa was going to fall, but that didn't happen. So we're going to take the big old eraser and take that away from Russia. One of the big things happening this week is a tremendous amount of shelling continuing to go on in Lviv. Lviv, again, is a place where Ukrainian Foreign Legion soldiers coming in, go through processing, learn about the army. They're coming in from Poland, from that direction. And there's also supposedly a weapons storage area that the Russians are saying they're taking a lot of credit for shelling and bombing that area. Ukrainians in Kiev have done a awesome job of making a flanking maneuver on the Russian army and pushing the Russians back away from the capital. It's important to get them more than 15 miles or 25 kilometers away from Kiev because that's their mobile guns. Sumy and Kharkiv are both previously been counted as taken by the Russians, according to them, and now we're showing that they do not. If you looked at the live UA map last week, they had pretty much given credit to the Russians for the capture of all this territory here. And, now we're going to say no because the Russians aren't able to hold that. And they have been beaten back on multiple fronts here. So once again, we're going to take the big old eraser and take that away from them because they have shown that they do not, in fact, possess all this area of Ukraine. So they are being beaten back on multiple fronts. So probably the most interesting thing that has happened here as of late is down here in Bernadette. If you've seen the video, the Ukrainian government was able to use short-range ballistic missiles in order to hit these ships in dock here. And the thing about it is Russian media went and placed videos all over of their ships sitting here and how proud they were. This is an LST that's burning, but how proud they were that they were here and they were delivering armored vehicles and they were delivering ammunition for the Russian troops. And these were premier ships, and they posted this all over the news. And the Ukrainians said, oh, okay, we know exactly where that is. And so they dialed up their short-range ballistic missiles, and they lit these things up. As you're watching this video, you can see in the water here to the right, as the LST in the background burns, you can see from secondary explosions, debris falling in the water, creating waves. The ship that's leaving dock here has some damage to the bow. It's obviously smoking. It's hard to see it, but right behind it is a third ship that's leaving. If you get to watch a complete video, that third ship is burning pretty good. So here we are, live UMAP, and you can see Kiev is not under Russian control. And they have beaten them back past 15-mile mark. And that's important because mobile artillery for the Russians, they need to be within about 15 miles to adequately shell the city. So Irpin right here in the middle of the screen is part of the place of the heaviest fighting currently. And now we go over to Sumy. We get over here. They had taken credit. Russians had said that they had completely occupied Sumy. That is not the case. They are on the outskirts of the city. The fighting in Sumy has been pretty fierce, and they have been able to absolutely repel the Russians at this time. Now we go down here to Kharkiv. Russians, again, had said that they had Kharkiv. It was in their control, and that is, again, not the case. So, Russians they like to take credit for stuff early, and they are being beat back on just about every front right now. Their propaganda machine is in full swing, so they keep posting things like this where they say that they've captured entire platoons or squads or companies of Ukrainians, and here, they've got them all facing up against the wall, and this is just their propaganda. Hey, we're beating the crap out of everybody, and we're pushing them back on multiple fronts, and this is what we do because we're Russia and we're awesome, but it's not. And here they just want to exploit that they're capturing all these weapons that have been sent from the West. This is what it is. It's part of war. I will show you here in just one second an interesting thing. But here we're going to see, and I tried to edit this to be as discreet as possible, but these are dead Ukrainian soldiers. And I had said earlier this week that they keep taking the boots off of dead Ukrainian soldiers. And I tried to edit this video to get any of the gore out. But you can see, here they are. They don't have any boots on. Now, here's this guy. He's thinking he's looking pretty fancy. But you can see the weapons that they've already got there stacked up have already been fired. So those are no longer any good. I don't know what he's trying to prove. But here this guy is running around in zip-up-the-side jungle boots in the middle of winter in Ukraine. I don't imagine that can be all that terribly comfortable. But again, look what he's got back here on this table. A pair of leather boots. So, obviously they are taking boots from people, and maybe footwear is not an issue. And you always get the guy at the end who, wants to do the gangster pose. So there you go. All right, so there you go. That's kind of a highlight of what's happened over the last week. Some very interesting developments. Now, one of the things I want to say about people who are wholly concerned about weaponry that was given to Ukraine by the West falling into the hands of Russia is that is not something to be concerned of. I promise you, they probably already had them. There's not a technology they're going to get off of those weapons that we would consider to be secret that they could somehow exploit to find new information to be able to counter those weapons or duplicate those weapons, right? Russia and China anyways do a horrible job of duplicating anything. So those weapons falling into the hands of the Russians is not the biggest deal. And it's something that happens in wartime. The United States will not send a weapon system to another country where we're not manning that weapon system ourselves, where we wouldn't almost plan for it to fall into the hands of another government, the government that's in opposition, right? So there's nothing to be said about that. It's really not a game changer. Number two is, if you watch Russian media and the things they're putting out, it was really concerning this week because there was a change in tone. So what I mean is that they have for a long time talked about going after neo-Nazis in eastern Ukraine, and they do that because are there neo-Nazis in eastern Ukraine? Yes, there are, but they do that because the Russians always watch Western media, and they know that in our own media and in our own culture in the last year or so, neo-Nazism, white supremacy, all those things have been hot button topics that the media has plugged away at. So they're trying to use our own stuff against us and get people to rally on their side by playing on the sentiments of things that the United States has said are issues for itself, and get some sympathy in that regard. However, by far and away, they misjudged what they were going to be able to do in Ukraine. Now, do I think that Russia's wholesale said to themselves yet that they're not doing well in this fight and that it's not going to end well for them? Well, I think they might be turning the page on that. And the reason I say that is that the Minister of Defense for Russia had a press conference this week where this is the very first time I've ever heard him speak on the fact that they wanted to make Ukraine kind of a long haul effort. That wasn't something where they thought they were going to come in real quick, knock everything out, and get back into Russia. And one of the things in a press conference that the minister said was that the military needed to try to treat the civilians in some way appropriately, because they were going to be living side by side with these people for a long time, and they didn't want to oppress the civilians. and then not have the civilian population on their side, which would make you believe that they think they're in this for the long haul. Well, I don't think you long haul a civilian population by shelling their cities into rubble and then thinking that they're going to embrace you. And there are a lot of propaganda videos that are produced by Russia where they have, you know, either Ukrainian soldiers or Ukrainian citizens who are in front of the camera surrounded by Russian troops, and they say, oh, you know, I didn't want to fight for Ukraine anyways, or, oh, thank God the Russians are here to protect it. Well, I mean, those are all coerced. You know, is there a possibility there'd be a few people who feel that way? Yeah. But when you're surrounded by, you know, 20 guys with weapons who at any given moment could just shoot you and throw your body in a ditch, are you really going to say anything to take them off? I really don't think so. So, you know, there's a lot of propaganda going out on that. Now, we've talked about the fact that, you know, Ukraine is winning the social media war by all stretch of the imagination. And I firmly believe they thought they were going to be able to rally kind of more support than what they have with some of the videos that they put out. And one of the indications that they've kind of hit the wall on that is the NATO president's remarks this week. And it was almost like he was talking specifically to Zelensky, and he said, hey, you guys can keep calling for a no-fly zone and other interventions, but we've given you what we're going to give you. You're not getting a no-fly zone. And basically he said, you might as well quit asking, because it ain't going to happen. So I think Russia is now starting to come to the mind frame that their offensive has ground to pretty much a halt. They've actually lost territory in the last week. The Ukrainians have put up a really good defense in several ways, and that is starting to concern me a little bit in one thing. And you know, I've been pretty consistent to this point that I didn't think that Russia would use a nuclear weapon in this offensive. But the longer this grinds to a halt, and the more Ukraine pushes Russian troops out from around the capital of Kiev and denies them the distance that they need to get artillery into Kiev and shell Kiev, the more I think the possibility is that Putin could actually call for a small yield nuclear weapon to be used inside Kiev. Okay, and specifically, if he could find the whereabouts of President Zelensky, potentially target him with that small yield nuclear weapon. So, do I think that there's a possibility of a nuclear weapon being launched in Europe or the United States? No, but do I think that there's a possibility of a small yield nuclear weapon being used in Ukraine? I would say that if you see all the Russian forces start hightailing it backwards, that I would get really, really worried that that was fixing to come. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying that the longer this goes on, the greater the potential for it is. Also, either that or the potential for chemical warfare to occur. The only other thing is, that I would highlight for this week, would be the increased notion that you know, this is going to wrap up here very shortly. And I've seen people who have said that, you know, the Russians were told their offensive had to be completed by the very beginning of May. And I don't know necessarily that they put a timeline on there. But the things that you're seeing in Russia, if you want to take the propaganda out of it, is that there's logistical supply issues for fuel and for food for the Russians. There's definitely issues for food for Ukrainians who are trapped in these cities. And, you know, this may be a war of starvation. And so, you know, that's going to be horrible for anybody involved in that. The last thing I would note for you is that it's reported that Ukraine produces about 10% of all the grain for the world. And that may not affect the United States directly as far as a lack of food, but if you take 10% of the grain of the world out of production, what you're going to do is make it harder to get in the marketplace, and some of the countries that we would consider to be third world countries would have a harder time getting their hands on it. So one of the results of what's going on in Ukraine may be mass starvation in some of these third world countries, where because they have to compete against other countries that have more buying power, they're unable to secure grain for their population, and you know, that would be a tragedy. So we'll see what develops over the next couple of days in Ukraine with the Russians, but their offensive is definitely ground to a halt. In some areas they've been pushed back, and you know, I would believe that that would make it more susceptible for the potential of a small yield nuclear weapon to be used inside the nation of Ukraine, not anywhere else. And we'll have to see kind of what the next week or so holds. That's just my 2 cents.